Thank you so much to Springboard for the Arts, Center for Small Towns, the University of Minnesota Morris, and the Rural Arts and Culture Summit. If you get just 2 points for my presentation this morning, please remember this. The arts have the power to transform community. The arts have the power to transform community, and anything is possible. I firmly believe that. Leveraging the arts and culture to build thriving communities. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to tell you the how by providing 2 examples from rural communities that I've lived in for the past 25 years. New York Mills, Minnesota, and Lanesboro, Minnesota. Here's the how. Vision. What's the big picture? So often people forget what they're doing. They lose the forest through the trees. What's the big picture? Philosophy. What are the principles behind the work? What are your core values? Creativity, creative problem solving. How do you use creativity to overcome obstacles? Strategy. Do your homework. Planning, research. Strategy. Will. Determination. Do you have the determination to do a project? To leverage the arts? It's also passion. Are you passionate? Do you have the passion to engage? This is one of my favorite quotes. Vision is so important. I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. I always wanted to be an artist or be involved in the arts somehow, and I wasn't quite sure how that would develop or how it would work. I went to MCAD, Minneapolis College of Art and Design, at first for graphic design. Then I switched to product design. I wanted to build things, I wanted to make things, I wanted to create things. And then I switched to fine arts, painting, and then sculpture. But I think one of the most beneficial classes I had while going to MCAD wasn't a fine arts class, it was a creative problem solving class. My professor was Jerry Allen. I don't think I was a really good student in that class. I think I probably got a B. And the lessons I learned from that class really didn't hit me until I got out into the real world and really started exploring what creative problem solving was. So I had this idea. I wanted to somehow be involved in the arts. I wanted to live in a rural community. And I had this vision of doing that. I had a vision. So this was my big vision. After graduating from MCAD, okay, so maybe this wasn't my big vision. This is where the vision started. My first job after graduating from MCAD was selling shoes at Buster Brown's shoe store. It was in a mall. And the idea was to get money so I could really do the vision. It just so happened the second day I was on the job, a friend of mine from MCAD was walking by and then did one of these. John? Is that you? It's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like. Okay, it is what it looks like. I'm working at a Buster Brown shoe store, but really it's a Dreams Farm, big art thing. Okay, I'm working at Buster Brown shoes. Enjoy your Orange Julius and go on from there. So I worked at Buster Brown for about 4 weeks to save money so I could get to the big vision. Here's the big vision. Okay. I saved that money to buy ladders so I could start a house painting business so I could get to the big vision. I painted houses in Minneapolis. I started a house painting business. At first I thought, how is this ever going to be useful? But I learned some key things. I learned how to be an entrepreneur, how to start a business, how to manage employees, how to make estimates, how to do sales. And that same employee who worked for me, the first person, was also the guy going like this. He was the first person that I hired. So I painted houses for 3 summers to finally get to my big vision. And it was my uncle, who I go fishing with, and fishing is part of my biography. I love to fish, right, Mark? He gave me some great advice. He said, John, let the place find you. Don't try to force where the place is. So I thought that was a great philosophy. And after he told me that, things just started coming a little bit easier, because I had amassed a small fortune painting houses for 3 summers, $10,000. And I thought, well, that's plenty of money to buy a farm. No problem, piece of cake. So I said, well, I'll just, wherever I can find a farm for $10,000, that's where I'm gonna move. That's the vision. So I found a place that was outside of this small town called New York Mills. And it was listed for $20,000. So I drove up, and well, 20,000, that's close. Went to the realtor's office, talked with the receptionist, asked the receptionist, well, how long has this property been on the market? She said, oh, 3 years. Why do you ask? I said, all the information I need. So I made an offer of $10,000. I said, tomorrow it's going to be $9,997 because I've got to buy a hamburger. So take it or leave it. So they took it. And so finally, I could get on with the big vision. Just a little bit of a fixer-upper. It had no doors, no windows, no plumbing, and no electricity. But other than that, it already came with occupants. There was a woodchuck that lived there. I had no idea where it was until the last few days of renovation. But having spent all of my money, I had to take out a loan just to live and fix it up. So I took out a low-interest loan, ran out of money. Took out another loan, ran out of money again. It was a little bit harder than what I thought. The first winter, I was determined to live in this farmhouse. The first winter, I had one electrical outlet and a furnace. I had no water, I had no insulation. And I realized insulation's kind of overrated. The heat hits you on its way out anyway. So, it's over. Sorry, energy industry, but when I got insulation, I realized it's way better to have insulation in a house. That's what I told myself the first winter there. But a funny thing happened. In the process of renovating this farmhouse and running out of money, friends would come up from the Twin Cities who were artists, and they would say, hey, this is a really cool place. You should do something with art. I'm like, yeah, that's why I moved here. I just don't know what that is yet. So the idea kept forming. I didn't know what to do. The inside, you can see it's pretty good. So the obstacle that I had to overcome, unfinished farmhouse, no money, no income. Pretty basic stuff. So I went back to what I knew best, painting houses, and this time I got to paint barns. And the money was a lot different in New York Mills than it was in the Twin Cities. The first year I lived in New York Mills, I made $4,000. That was my income. That's what I survived on. But the good news was that people didn't view me as a threat or a risk. I was the person that painted barns. I painted. I got dirty. I was doing this renovation project that was impossible. And I got to know the people in the community. I got to know farmers. I got to know teachers. I got to know business people. And I'd have conversations. Often after I got off of a 40-foot ladder, I'd have dinner. I learned that dinner is at noon in rural communities, not 6. So got that switched around a little bit. But the conversations were amazing. I learned that in rural America, in New York Mills, people had a yearning for the arts. They just didn't have access. So we talked poetry, we talked opera, we talked exhibitions. And I kept thinking, that's not right. It's not right that this community doesn't have access to the arts. So I wanted to do something about it. But it still wasn't gelling. So I asked people in the audience here today, how many people have had an aha moment where things just kind of come together? Raise your hand. Just about everyone. Well, I had an aha moment. That same friend who saw me at the Buster Brown, going like this, going like that, and then painting houses for me, gave me a gift. And it was an amazing gift. And everything came together, and I had my aha moment. Toy plastic tractor. Everything came together. I'd start something called the New York Mills Arts Retreat. The mission would be to provide innovative access to the arts. The logo would be the tractor to symbolize cultivating the arts. The goal, to become a national model for rural arts and economic development. Philosophy behind this organization Access to the arts builds community. Programs should be designed to integrate the arts and gain community buy-in. And the most important, the audience is everyone. And having that shift, that the audience is everyone, changes the way you approach how you design arts programming. So where do you start? I researched other artist residency centers, other art colonies, found out that most of them were started by either very wealthy people or people with a lot of land to start a colony. So I decided, don't go that way. Don't reinvent the wheel, create a unique program. So I formed a board of directors from people from the community. One of the things that I did, other than painting barns and houses, was volunteering for local organizations. One was the Finnish Museum called Finn Creek. The other was an organization called Senior Arts and Handicrafters, just helping them sell their work so that they can supplement their income as retirees. And so people got to know me in the community, not as an artist, but someone who volunteered and painted barns. So the idea is create a program where one artist at a time could come to a community, gain experience in that community, have time to create their artwork, but give something back to the community so the community wins with their proposal. And this was the finished farmhouse where residencies took place. So I moved to New York Mills in 1987, and the retreat was finished in 1989. One of the first artists was from Manchester, England. She didn't know what she was getting herself into staying at the farm. Had a beautiful accent. Brilliant. Had a beautiful, brilliant Manchester accent. Loved the arts, passionate. Had never worked with kids before in her life. So I was the facilitator for the residency and was just going around cleaning up disasters as she was having a great time playing with the kids. They had a great time learning about art, and she had a wonderful time in America and eventually got her green card and moved to America because of her experience in New York Mills. Opportunity. Now earlier we talked about assets. What are the assets in your community? This was the first brick building in New York Mills, and it was literally falling down. The bricks were falling off the building. There was a swimming pool, a kiddie swimming pool in the upstairs of 10-foot ceilings that collected water that went outside. You could touch the 10-foot ceiling because it had sagged so much. It was in terrible shape, and it was ready to go. I had heard that the owner was perhaps interested in donating this building. So, realizing that he had nowhere to give it, I heard that the city rejected it because it was in such poor shape. So I thought, let's move forward. But let's develop a strategy with our board of directors. Since it was a small town and this was change, let's look at taking away reasons that people can say no by anticipating negative outcomes and concerns. Don't use the A word, arts, use the economic development word. Research the community. I researched and found out that the city of New York Mills had given money to the library project, so they had money to give. I attended city council meetings for a year before I asked for any support from the city, so that they could know me and I could know how the city functioned. Go around brick walls. It sounds really simple. So many times people want to go right through the problem. It's okay to go around. It's okay. Perhaps most importantly, redefine risk. In New York Mills, people in the city council were afraid of change. In 1990, the economy wasn't good, and it was perceived as a risk going forward with an arts project. So I redefined the question. Let's move forward with an economic development project. Investing $35,000 in a cultural center, where's the risk? If you invest $35,000 in this project, in this building, and it's partially renovated, and the project fails, it's going to be worth far more than $35,000. So if the project fails, you win. If you invest $35,000 and the project does what we say it's going to do, be a national model for rural economic development, and be a beacon for the community to spark a revitalization through creativity, if that happens, you win, and the community wins. So to recap, if the project fails, you win. If the project succeeds, you win. Where's the risk? The risk is if you do nothing. If you do nothing, the building goes back to the city, you're going to have to tear it down. That's going to cost $35,000. And what do you get? A vacant lot. You lose the history of your community. That's the risk. So the owner not only donated the building, he contributed $12,000 to start the capital campaign. The city of New York Mills contributed $35,000. At the time, it was the equivalent of Minneapolis giving $12 million to a project. At that city council meeting, there were a lot of questions. One of the questions was actually a comment by a council member who said, you know, I've only heard negative things about this project. Where's the support? And I looked at him and said, you know, I respect your opinion, but I've had the exact opposite experience. And here's a list of 100 people who are members to an organization that doesn't have a facility yet, including your dad, your sister, your uncle. Those are the supporters. Oh, it changed their mind. So the city contributed money and had a buy-in. They had an investment in the project now. And they had a condition. They said, okay, we'll provide the money, but we get the keys to the building. I said, fine. If the project does what we say it's going to do, we get the keys in 5 years. If it doesn't, you get the keys. Eliminate the risk. Make it easier to say yes, harder to say no. This was the day the mayor decided to look at the building and inspect it. I had to tell him everything was fine. The contractor ripped off the roof, and I actually didn't know that the mayor was going to inspect. Just needed some minor repairs. No big problem. Situation normal, no problem. Over 2,000 hours of volunteer effort went into the building. The person who's on his knees right there is Lindy. He owned the hardware store next door. He wasn't really a fan of the project. He was kind of skeptical. When we hired him to do the HVAC for the project, he really changed his mind. It meant dollars in his pocket. We hired all local contractors to work on it. It was money in the pockets of employees and contractors in New York Mills. The person next to him was his daughter, who volunteered as well. That's the transformation. Again, the project budget was $125,000. That's in 1990 dollars. The city economic developer noted that it would cost twice that much. But serving as general contractor with that same experience that I had starting the house painting business actually came into play. So I was able to save money, hire local contractors, put the money in the economy of New York Mills, and the project opened on time and under budget. This was the ribbon cutting ceremony. The mayor is applauding. He was very happy. The person to my right was Jim Buchan, a dear friend of mine. He grew up in New York Mills, moved to Washington, D.C. He was the press secretary for the Surgeon General, Seaver Coop. He had heard about this project in New York Mills and decided to move back when he retired. He had coffee with me, and he just said, I've got one question. Why New York Mills? I said, why not? He's like, good, I'm on board. Love Jim Buchan. But what I learned from him as well is that media and publicity can be used as a tool. Just like a house painter can use a paintbrush or a contractor can use a hammer, you can use the media to get your message across, to get your vision across, to help the community in an upward spiral, to tell your story. The center hosted gallery exhibits, music, film festivals, performing arts, literary events. One of my favorite first exhibits, it was all about making art accessible, was a fish decoy exhibition. We had 50 regional fish decoy carvers. We sold half the work at the exhibit, but we got a new audience, fishermen, people from around the lakes. The Great American Think-Off. When I first proposed this idea of a philosophy competition to my board of directors, they just looked at me like, what? Why would, I don't understand. It's like, no, I want to make philosophy accessible, just like making arts accessible. What if you brought philosophy down from the ivory tower and made it accessible to the average person? What would it look like? I threw this idea out to the Chamber of Commerce, and they said, okay, let me get this straight. You want to have a philosophy contest in New York Mills. You're going to charge people money to attend, and People are going to come to this and it's going to work? Really? I said, yes. We're going to have $2,000 in prize money. We're going to charge $50 for front row seats. We're going to call it philosopher seating. And not only is it going to work, we're going to get national publicity because of it. Sure, you just go ahead and do your think off and see what happens. First year, it was called the Great Midwestern Think Off, but we got entries from all over the country, so it expanded. We sold out the Cultural Center. And it just so happened that CNN picked up the story, and it took off from there. C-SPAN covered the event live for 3 years, and we were able to leverage that to promote the vision of a small town utilizing the arts to transform itself. Innovation. So I modified the logo a little bit for the Think Off. And if you notice that old computer screen, there's a little Apple icon in it. So the 1996 Think Off, why is that innovative? If I were to ask everyone here in the audience today if this presentation was streamed live over the web and there was a Q&A session that happened in real time with a moderator, would that be innovative? Raise your hands if you think it would be innovative. Or is it more just like cutting edge standard for today? What about 5 years ago? Would it have been innovative 5 years ago? How about 10 years ago? How about 17 years ago? Well, a friend of mine, the same person who walked like that, said, you know, have you heard about this fellow called Scott Combs? He started a new company called Net Radio. You should talk with him. What's Net Radio? It was a startup internet company that broadcast events over the internet. They had only done music until then, and they'd been going for about 6 months. I talked with them, and I said, yeah, we'd love to do the Think Off. We've never done something like that before. We've only broadcast music. So they broadcast the Great American Think Off. Probably about 15 people around the country had the software to listen to it. But it was the first interactive event ever on the internet. Marketing. For our first music and film festival in New York Mills, we got billboard space donated by a local company. The logo on the water tower, I like to say it took 5 years for that to be somebody else's idea, and it did. I always wanted to do it, but finally it was somebody else's idea. That's a good idea. I think I should look into that. I had already researched the water tower company that painted water towers, provided the image, and had all of the information financially for the city so that when they were ready to make a decision, they were ready to go. Taking away reasons to say no. This is a theme of a lot of presentations during this conference. This was a public art collaboration by an artist in residence, Marcia McEachran. Her proposal was to work with the community, but we'll work with farmers. So she worked with the local Senex station, which is a farm cooperative, and made this fence with discarded farm implements, parts donated by area farmers. That was a great reception. These are two of the farmers looking at their parts that they had donated. Each section of the fence actually represented a different part of the agricultural community. Community arts integration. The street signs came about because the city planner was saying that they were going to order new street signs, and it was going to cost X amount of dollars. And I said, well, how about if we could save some money and we had kids paint those? The Art Center will take care of the whole thing, you'll save money. Okay, we'll do that, we'll save money. We had just about every elementary class participate in the project. And something that happened was quite spontaneous. When the banners went up, all the kids went outside and had their parents with them, and there was a spontaneous parade to look at all of the artwork on both sides of the banners. At a certain point, there were more jobs than people in New York Mills, and an industrial park was created. I wasn't exactly in favor of it, because if you have more jobs than people, why do you need an industrial park? But my solution was to look at it creatively. How can this turn into an opportunity for the arts? So, simple as putting street names of philosophers and artists was one solution. The other solution was a bit more complicated. The key piece to the industrial park was the land that we just turned off into New York Mills, and the economic developer at the time wanted to put in a fast food place. I said, here's an idea. You can be driving down Highway 10, You can look to your right. There's a fast food place like a Perkins. You come in, get your meal, get your gas, and be on your way. And people were like nodding, okay. So as opposed to criticizing that, have a positive alternative. So I presented a positive alternative. I said, okay, here's another scenario. You're driving down Highway 10, you look to your right, you see this massive tractor. Say, what's that? You see all of this art and sculpture. You drive in, you see a sign that talks about the community. You go into the community, you have some lunch, you find out that there's a really cool B&B that's themed on trains, and you stay at the Whistle Stop B&B in a caboose. You get up the next day, shop at the local shops, and then you drive away. Which one sounds better? We like the one where you're driving and you find the art tractor. Okay. So the city donated the land for a sculpture park. There was just one problem with it. There was a huge 900-foot barbed wire fence that was originally part of a farm. And I asked the city to look at providing some money to create a new fence. I said, well, it cost about $6,000 to do a chain link fence, or you can have an art fence that costs $4,000. Which one do you want to do? The art fence can get you publicity. We'll go with the art fence. So the artist who worked on the Senex project and Coral Lambert did a joint proposal to create an art fence for the sculpture park and involve the community. So kids would have a chance to make their own cast iron corn cob. Businesses could make their own cast iron corn cob. It would be installed in the fence. It'd be painted John Deere yellow. And this was the final sculpture park. Right next to me, that's me, was a corn cob. And this took 6 years to be somebody else's idea. This was the postmaster's idea. I'd wanted to do it for a long time. The artist who did this, the sculptor, is Ken Nyberg. He's a farmer. He welded grain elevators for a living. One day he woke up, decided, I need to build something big. He built a big foot. Built it in Henning, Minnesota. True story. You can't make it up. And he just kept building big things because he knew how to weld grain elevators. He just kept making things like a coffee, just like Klaus Oldenburg. So we commissioned him to do the world's largest art tractor. Some accomplishments have already been talked about earlier in the presentation. One that I'm most proud of is being listed in Corporate Report magazine for the economic development part. Another thing that happened as well in terms of economic data, it's listed up here, but the data tracking. The economic developer who opposed the project wanted to track data, and I thought that was a brilliant idea. You could have a baseline for how the cultural center functioned and a baseline for jobs in the community. After it opened, we could then find out if the center indeed had an impact on the community. But one of the questions that was put on the survey was, do you support, as a community member, and every community member got a survey, do you support the city giving money to this project? And when the surveys came back, it was 65% of the people opposed it. And our board was, people are opposing this, what do we do, what do we do? This is a perceived problem. There was no real problem because we had already received the money. So know when you actually have a real problem or if it's a perceived problem. So this is not a problem. I guarantee you, once we open the doors, people are going to change their opinions. And sure enough, in 1992, after the center opened, the same survey went out, and 67% of the people said not only should the city give money, they should do it annually. And so that's what happened. And just recently, New York Mills and the creative placemaking work was cited by the NEA in its request to Congress as one of the inspirations and models behind the Our Town initiative. New York Mills to Lanesboro, how did that happen? I took about a year break after finishing the work in New York Mills, and I'd heard about Lanesboro. I just had no idea what was going on in Lanesboro. I heard that they wanted to do an art center. I thought, well, I think Lanesboro has a kind of a starting economy that has to do with tourism. What's that about? It's about 754 people. And this is kind of what I was walking into. This is the background. In 1980, the Art Council forms and starts the annual Art in the Park Festival. 1983, our council acquires the historic St. Main Theater, begins hosting music and theater events. 1986, Root River Trail opens in Lanesboro, laying the groundwork for recreational tourism. This is a real key point because the arts started first, but the trail really started to have a synergy with the arts. 89, Commonwealth Theater opens its doors with the help of the Lanseboro Art Council, providing rent for $1 a year in the St. Main Theater space. And the new Commonwealth building opened in 2007. It's a magnificent facility. 1994, Cornucopia Art Center opens its doors with $5,000 in startup money. 1998, Cornucopia and Commonwealth begin plans for a joint facility in one building. And in 2000, I take the position of executive director of Cornucopia Art Center. One of the first things I did in the community was join the board of what was called ACT. It was kind of the chamber, but it was called ACT, which stood for Agriculture, Commerce, and Tourism. But people weren't joining it. It had a part-time director, and the reason why people weren't joining it is that they were confused. They thought ACT was the theater. So they thought, well, why would we join ACT? We already support the theater. So my first suggestion was, if you just change your name to the Lanesboro Area Chamber of Commerce and be a chamber, you can strengthen the community, you can be more civic-oriented, and you can do more promotion for the community. I'm like, that's a great idea, John. You get to be president, and then you can make that happen. So I did. I worked with the ACT to have a Chamber of Commerce formed. But it was also strategic. I saw the Chamber and the Visitor Center as a way to leverage publicity. If there was a full-time director of the Chamber, they could work on publicity all of the time. They could promote the community. They could promote the arts, or promote economic development. So as I engaged with the community, a new vision started to form. You've got the Art Council, you've got Cornucopia. Instead of everything fitting in one building, what if the whole town becomes an arts campus? So I started working on the components. One of the first components was a partnership with Forecast Public Art and the city of Lanesboro. We did an RFP for proposals, and the most brilliant proposal was by someone familiar to me, Cora Lambert. She proposed something called Discover Sculpture, Explore Lanesboro, which fit perfectly into the campus model. To promote the walkability of the community, literally discover sculpture as you're going through the community. She worked with the town historian, with the school district, with the DNR, to create medallions that would represent different parts of the community. And people in the community would have a chance to actually add items that had to do with their theme to the project. Great example of community buying. One of the challenges with Lanesboro is nobody parked in the parking lot. Well, what if that was transformed into a poetry parking lot and you infused poetry? Encourage people to park. We worked with the county to develop an underpass that would actually connect the parking lot to a gateway sculpture park. So we secured land for a gateway sculpture park and a historic walking bridge. Again, identifying assets to the community. This is an 1892 walking bridge that was literally almost falling down. The city was looking at possibly tearing it down. I worked with a local community member to lead a campaign to save the bridge. I viewed it as a key component to an arts project. They viewed it as a historic element of the community. So somebody else led the campaign. It was a $300,000 campaign to restore the bridge. And it passed with a community bond referendum that the city approved by about a 70% margin. So with all these components of the campus, I thought, now I just have to talk with the arts organizations. That'll be the easy part. So I talked with our board of directors, I talked with the Lanesboro Art Council, and I talked with the Commonwealth. And the response to this idea of an arts campus was unanimous. So the response was, well, that's not how you do an art center. You put it in a building. What do you put all these pieces? Now, we're going to do it in a building. So that was kind of disappointing. So I thought, well, you hired me for vision. Here's the new vision. The components are all there. The city's bought in, the chamber's bought in, but the arts organizations aren't buying in. I guess I didn't do that homework first. I just assumed that. So what do? Visions don't align. Well, I did the only thing that I thought was possible. Clearly, the only solution is to leave Cornucopia, get an Airstream, travel around the country, and promote philosophy for kids. So that's what I did. So the Kids Philosophy Slam is a junior version of the Great American Think-Off. It challenges kids to tackle questions like, what's the meaning of life? Is the nature of humankind good or evil? It gives them a voice. There's no pure right or wrong answers with philosophy. Get them thinking. In 2003, the winner of the Philosophy Slam was featured on the Today Show. In 2006, finalists were at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And it was in December of 2006 that I got a call from Cornucopia Art Center. I said, wait, we're having a few problems, just challenges. Maybe you could come back and help. They're financial, not, a big deal. I said, sure. I've invested a lot in the community. Sure, I'll do that. Well, just a couple of conditions. The conditions were, nothing's changed. The elements for the art campus are still here. Let's talk about how a merger can happen. Let's talk about it. So instead of taking it for granted, I talked with the founders of Cornucopia Art Center. I talked with the founders of the Art Council. I said, here's this idea. What do you think? You started it. And just having those conversations, people felt valued, and they supported the idea. So again, community buy-in, starting with new projects. This was another really successful exhibit. It featured photographs by the local sales barn, which is like a livestock auction community, one of the biggest employers. But a lot of people in Lanesboro had no idea what it was. So I thought, why not engage the community and honor this work and educate the public and get some buy-in from the agricultural community. So we talked with Joe Nelson. He said no at first. He thought it was going to be something controversial. So I had a farmer talk with him and try to convince him that no, we want to do something that honors your business, that can show people how hard you work and do it in an artistic way. So he said yes. And we got sponsorship from the Minnesota Beef Council, Minnesota Cattlemen's Association, grilled steaks out in front of the Arts Center. And we had over 200 people attend an opening. It was absolutely amazing. Again, continuing with community involvement, having an artist in residence program in Lanesboro, having the St. Main Theater program, music, performing arts, opera, ballet, and Over the Back Fence community radio show, which is a smaller version of Prairie Home Companion. People from the community have a chance to showcase their talents on a monthly basis. It's a 130-seat theater. It sells out every month. Again, going over the vision, what is it? It's providing audience with an inspiring experience. It's expanding opportunities for artists. And it's promoting the economic vibrancy of Lanesboro. So it's not just about making the Arts Center work and benefit. It's benefiting the entire community by leveraging that publicity, putting Lanesboro in a national spotlight so more people can come to the community, more artists can benefit from the results. The campus is made up of buildings that house the arts in public spaces, and walkways defined by the arts. Things like a bridge, a trail. What's more powerful than a vision? Shared vision. Went to the city, who's already had a buy-in to the project. They commissioned a local artist, Carl Unash, to create unique wayfinding signs for the community. The chamber. Now that there was a full-time director, it started to get national press, including recruiting Garrison Keillor to do a performance of Prairie Home Companion from the softball field. Now people could get to the softball field because they went across the walking bridge to get to the softball field. They could park in the parking lot. The Rhubarb Sisters worked 2 years to try to get Garrison Keillor to come to Lanesboro. What was finally the tipping point, and the Rhubarb Sisters are a musical group, kind of like the Andrews Sisters, but they replaced lyrics so that it's about rhubarb. Bebop, a loobop, my rhubarb baby. You know, it's a lot of fun. Garrison Keillor thought it was fun too, did a show, put Lanesboro even more in the national spotlight. That's Garrison enjoying some rhubarb pie. So we started a capital campaign. Our director of the capital campaign, our campaign chair, is actually on the city council. And he's the director of our capital campaign. Our goal was 1.1 million. McKnight Foundation very generously started our campaign off with a $100,000 donation. We applied for $135,000 from Art Place for the Arts Campus project. We made the final round, but we didn't receive funding. And when I got that word, it was crushing. It was overwhelming. I so thought this was going to happen, and it didn't. I talked with my campaign chair, I talked with Julie at the chamber. I said, what are we going to do? I said, well, let's keep moving forward. Let's make it even bigger, though. Let's refocus the vision. Let's clarify our philosophy. Let's reimagine what it can be creatively. Renew and recreate the strategy. Utilize will. So when is it ever a good thing not to receive a $135,000 grant? That's what I kept telling myself. How can this be turned into a positive? How can we do this positively? We clarified the vision, rewrote the grant to make the project not just about the components of the arts campus, but to get the buy-in from the chamber and the city to transform the entire town into an art center, to redefine the paradigm for what a small town can be. Have the whole town an arts campus. So when is it ever a good thing not to receive a $135,000 grant? So the tagline for the Arts Campus is building a new vision for the arts. With the Art Place grant and McKnight support, we're not done yet. We're 2/3 of the way there. Lanesboro was also named one of the top 12 small art town places in America for 2013 and received one of 5 innovation awards from Americans for the Arts in support of the Arts Campus vision. So I want to leave you with the arts have the power to transform communities, and anything is possible. Thank you.